Recovered Guild Expedition Report. Status: unresolved. Begin record.
The first thing Aldrin noticed was that the tracks changed after sunset. During the day, they belonged to something heavy, four-legged, and unmistakably wyvern-like. But when darkness swallowed the mountain pass, those same tracks sank deeper into the frozen earth, as though the creature had suddenly doubled in weight. Every few steps, the claw marks lengthened, gouging trenches through stone that no living beast should have been able to carve. The second thing he noticed was the smell, a mixture of scorched fur, blood, and something metallic that reminded him of old weapons left too long beside a furnace. Red sparks drifted between the pine trees despite the complete absence of fire, crawling over trunks like glowing insects before vanishing into the snow. Whenever Aldrin's heartbeat quickened, those sparks appeared in greater numbers, and something far ahead answered with a growl that vibrated through his ribs. By the time he understood what was happening, the monster was no longer merely hunting him. Its demonic fangs had grown longer, its claws were splitting boulders apart, and crimson dragon energy poured from its body like smoke escaping the gates of hell itself. Aldrin had spent his entire life believing fear was an instinct designed to keep people alive. But somewhere on that mountain, fear had become food. 3 days earlier, Aldrin had arrived at the abandoned mining settlement of Vesper Ridge with 6 other hunters. The guild had classified the assignment as an investigation after caravans began disappearing along the northern trade road, leaving behind overturned wagons, shattered weapons, and bodies so badly mutilated that even seasoned trackers refused to describe them. What disturbed the guild most, however, was that several victims appeared to have died before the monster ever touched them. Their expressions had been frozen into masks of terror, eyes stretched wide and fingers locked around weapons they had never managed to swing. Some had collapsed against trees while fleeing, their armor completely intact except for strange red burns spreading beneath the metal like veins beneath skin. The expedition physician blamed dragon energy, but she could not explain why the burns were most severe around the heart. There were rumors among the miners who had escaped Vesper Ridge before it was abandoned. They spoke of a black thunderwolf appearing during storms, stalking workers through tunnels without attacking, sometimes following the same victim for hours while deliberately remaining just visible enough to keep them running. The miners called it the Red Devil, but experienced hunters knew another name for a creature matching that description. Stygian Zinogre. Aldrin had hunted ordinary Zinogre before, and he knew their reputation for speed, aggression, and devastating electrical attacks. A Stygian Zinogre was worse, a dark subspecies capable of harnessing crimson dragon energy through swarms of Dracophage bugs, turning an already lethal predator into something far more violent. Yet nothing in guild records suggested that one should grow stronger simply because its prey was afraid. The expedition discovered its first fresh kill less than an hour after reaching Vesper Ridge. A merchant lay beneath a collapsed watchtower with his sword still sheathed, while deep claw wounds scarred the surrounding ground in enormous circles around his body. It looked as though the Zinogre had paced around him repeatedly, waiting, watching, and allowing the terrified man to understand exactly what was coming. Aldrin crouched beside the corpse and noticed tiny crimson burns across the merchant's neck. They were clustered beneath the jaw, where his pulse would have hammered hardest. And when the physician touched one with a metal probe, a faint red spark snapped against the instrument. She immediately pulled away, but Aldrin continued staring at the dead man's face and wondered how long he had been forced to wait. They found more evidence inside the settlement. Doors had been torn from hinges, but nothing inside the buildings had been eaten. Storage rooms were untouched, and preserved meat remained hanging from hooks where starving monsters would have devoured it immediately. Whatever had attacked Vesper Ridge had not come there looking for ordinary food. That evening, the hunters barricaded themselves inside the mining foreman's lodge. Heavy snow buried the roads, eliminating any possibility of retreat until morning, while outside the windows the forest became a wall of black trunks and shifting mist. They lit every lantern they could find, although none of them admitted that the extra light was meant for comfort rather than visibility. The first howl came shortly after midnight. It rolled down the mountain with enough force to make dust fall from the rafters, beginning as the familiar territorial cry of a Zinogre before sinking into something deeper and almost distorted. Several hunters reached instinctively for their weapons, and at that exact moment, crimson lights appeared beyond the windows. Hundreds of them floated through the trees like burning eyes opening one after another. Dracophage bugs. Aldrin watched them gather around an enormous silhouette standing at the edge of the settlement. The beast's black fur swallowed most of the moonlight, while silver armor plates rose along its shoulders and back, giving it the appearance of some ancient war demon crouched beneath the snow. Two red eyes stared directly toward the lodge, and beneath them, enormous fangs protruded from jaws slowly opening in what looked disturbingly close to anticipation. No one moved. Then one hunter whispered that it could see them. The Zinogre's body erupted with crimson light. Dragon energy surged across its shoulders in violent currents, illuminating every armored ridge and every hooked claw. Its front paws pressed into the ground, and the frozen street fractured beneath them as though the earth had become thin glass. Aldrin had seen charged Zinogre before, but he had never seen one transform so quickly. The creature had not attacked. Nobody had wounded it or forced it into battle, and the Dracophage bugs had only just begun gathering around its body. Yet somehow, in the few seconds after the hunter whispered those frightened words, the monster's power had visibly increased. Then it disappeared. The wall exploded inward before anyone could scream. Timber, stone, and shattered glass filled the lodge as the Zinogre crashed through the barricade with terrifying speed, swinging one claw across the room and cutting a hunter completely through his armored chest. The impact threw Aldrin beneath a table, where he heard the wet scrape of enormous claws dragging across the floorboards. Another hunter fired a bow gun at point-blank range. The shot struck the Zinogre's shoulder, detonating against black fur and silver plating, but instead of recoiling, the monster slowly turned toward him and exposed its fangs. Crimson energy crawled between those teeth, coating them in a red glow that made its mouth resemble the entrance to a furnace. The hunter panicked. Aldrin saw the exact moment it happened. The man's breathing accelerated, his hands began shaking, and his second shot went wide as the Zinogre lowered its head and watched him with unnatural patience. Every frightened breath seemed to pull more Dracophage bugs through the broken wall, and every new insect poured another thread of crimson power into the monster's body. The Zinogre lunged. Its claws struck with enough force to pulverize the floor beneath the hunter, and when the beast lifted its paw, nothing recognizable remained beneath it. Red energy spilled from its forelimbs in twisting streams before sinking back into its muscles, which seemed larger now, swollen beneath the black fur. Aldrin felt his own terror rising, and the monster's head immediately turned toward him. That was when he understood that hiding would not save him. The Zinogre could feel it. Aldrin crawled through the destroyed wall and ran into the blizzard with the surviving hunters scattered behind him. They had spent years learning how predators tracked scent, blood, movement, and sound, but none of that training prepared them for a creature following something inside their own minds. Every spike of panic was a beacon, and every terrified heartbeat seemed to guide the beast directly toward them. Behind Aldrin, another scream rose through the storm. Crimson lightning flashed between the trees, briefly revealing the Zinogre standing over a fallen hunter with its jaws buried around his shoulder. The man was still alive, and instead of finishing him immediately, the monster released him and stepped backward. It let him crawl. The injured hunter dragged himself through the snow while begging the others for help. The Zinogre followed slowly, deliberately scraping its demonic claws across nearby rocks so the sound carried through the darkness. Each scrape made the wounded man more frantic, and each burst of terror caused the crimson aura surrounding the monster to burn brighter. Aldrin wanted to turn back, but then the Zinogre raised one paw. Its claws had become surrounded by dense red energy that stretched beyond their physical edges like spectral talons, each one nearly the length of a sword. When the paw descended, the shock wave split 3 trees and tore the wounded hunter from the ground. No ordinary charge state could explain that power. The survivors reached the mine entrance and sealed the iron gate behind them. Aldrin, the physician, and a veteran lancer named Corvin were the only ones left, and all 3 knew the gate would barely slow the creature. They descended into tunnels cut deep beneath Vesper Ridge, hoping layers of stone might conceal whatever signals their fear was somehow producing. The physician finally revealed something she had discovered during the autopsy. The dragon burns around the victims' hearts contained microscopic traces of material resembling Dracophage bug scales, suggesting that the insects had been drawn toward intense biological stress. The insects were not literally consuming emotions, but fear was producing something they could detect, and the Zinogre had somehow learned to exploit that response. Corvin understood before Aldrin did. The monster had trained humans. It stalked them because frightened prey made the swarm more active. It delayed attacks because anticipation caused terror to build, and it allowed wounded victims to flee because helplessness produced even stronger reactions, whether through instinct or intelligence. The Stygian Zinogre had discovered that terrified humans could charge its dragon energy faster than any ordinary confrontation. Something slammed into the iron gate far above them. The entire tunnel shook. Another impact followed, harder than the first, and red dust began glowing along the ceiling as Dracophage bugs poured through cracks in the rock. Aldrin felt his stomach tighten at the sight, and immediately the insects changed direction, gathering around him instead of continuing toward the entrance. The physician stared at them and whispered for him to calm down. That command made everything worse. A third impact ripped the gate from its frame. The Zinogre entered the mine. They heard its claws before they saw it, each step producing a sharp metallic scrape as enormous talons dragged along the stone. Crimson light moved through the tunnel ahead, like the glow of an approaching fire, revealing claw marks that appeared moments before the monster itself emerged. When its head finally rounded the corner, the beast had changed again. Its fangs extended past its lower jaw, coated in pulsing dragon energy that dripped from them like burning saliva. Thick currents of red lightning traveled beneath its armored plates, and the muscles around its shoulders had expanded until its silhouette barely resembled the creature they had first seen outside the lodge. Fear was not simply charging it anymore. Fear was transforming it. Corvin attacked before panic could take control. He lowered his shield and drove the lance directly into the Zinogre's chest, striking hard enough to force the creature backward several steps. For one brief moment, Aldrin felt hope. And the crimson aura around the Zinogre visibly weakened. The physician saw it too. She shouted that confidence disrupted the cycle. Corvin attacked again, and this time the monster snarled instead of advancing. Aldrin forced himself to breathe slowly, concentrating on the weight of his sword and the position of his feet rather than those enormous red eyes. The Dracophage Bug scattered slightly, and the Zinogre's supernatural claws shrank closer to their normal length. Then the tunnel lights went out. Aldrin heard Corvin scream. When crimson light returned, the Zinogre had somehow moved behind him. One demonic fang protruded through Corvin's chest, while the monster held his body suspended in its jaws, and the veteran's shield lay broken several meters away. Corvin's eyes found Aldrin's, and whatever courage Aldrin had managed to build collapsed instantly. The Zinogre felt it. Its body convulsed as crimson energy erupted outward. The mine became red daylight. Dracophage bugs swarmed from every crack by the thousands, wrapping the monster in spiraling clouds, while its claws extended into enormous blades of condensed dragon power. Its fangs glowed almost white at their centers, and the rocks beneath its feet began cracking without the creature even moving. Aldrin ran. The physician followed him deeper into the mine, but fear had already seized control. Every echo sounded like claws. Every falling stone sounded like another charge, and every imagined glimpse of red light caused Aldrin's heart to hammer harder. Behind them, the Zinogre accelerated. It was becoming faster because they were becoming more afraid. The physician stumbled near an underground bridge spanning an abandoned excavation shaft. Aldrin grabbed her hand, but a blast of dragon energy struck the bridge behind them and shredded half the wooden supports. She fell against the railing, looked downward into the darkness, and began screaming as the structure collapsed beneath her. Aldrin tried to hold on. Then two red eyes appeared behind her. The Zinogre could have killed her instantly, but it stopped at the edge of the broken bridge. It watched her hanging above the abyss while Aldrin struggled to keep his grip, allowing both humans to understand exactly how helpless they were. Red energy thickened around its jaws with every second. The physician realized what it was doing. She looked at Aldrin and told him to release her. He refused. She shouted that the monster needed them terrified, and that every second he imagined losing her was making it stronger. The Zinogre lowered its head as though listening, crimson light pouring between its demonic fangs, while the spectral edges surrounding its claws stretched farther across the bridge. Then the physician let go. Her hand slipped from Aldrin's. She vanished into darkness before he could stop her, leaving him staring at an empty space where she had been. Horror surged through him, followed immediately by grief, then rage so overwhelming that for several seconds there was no room left for fear. The Zinogre's crimson aura flickered. Aldrin saw it. The monster stepped backward. For the first time that night, it looked uncertain, and Aldrin finally understood the trap completely. The creature had made terror feel inevitable, because terror was the weapon it needed most. But without frightened prey feeding the swarm, beneath all that demonic energy and impossible strength, it was still flesh and blood. He drew his sword. The Zinogre roared and charged. Aldrin did not imagine its claws tearing him apart. He did not think about the corpses in Vesper Ridge, the shattered lodge, Corvin hanging from those monstrous jaws, or the darkness that had swallowed the physician. He focused only on the opening beneath the beast's shoulder and stepped forward. The red claws came down. Aldrin rolled beneath them and drove his blade into the Zinogre's chest. The sword sank deep. Crimson energy erupted around him, but instead of becoming brighter, it scattered violently through the tunnel as thousands of Dracophage bugs abandoned the monster at once. The Zinogre snapped its fangs inches from Aldrin's face, yet their glow was fading, and the supernatural edges surrounding its claws dissolved into ordinary bone and keratin. It was still enormous. It was still deadly, but it was no longer unstoppable. Aldrin escaped Vesper Ridge shortly before sunrise. The Stygian Zinogre did not follow him beyond the mine, although distant roars continued echoing beneath the mountain long after he reached the trade road. When guild reinforcements arrived 2 days later, they found blood throughout the tunnels, but no corpse belonging to the monster. The official report described the creature as an unusually aggressive Stygian Zinogre, displaying a highly developed relationship with its Dracophage Bug swarm. Aldrin wrote something different in the private warning attached beneath it. He explained that anyone sent to hunt the beast needed more than armor, weapons, traps, and knowledge of dragon resistance. They needed control over themselves. Because somewhere beneath Vesper Ridge, a wounded predator was learning. It had discovered that demonic fangs could frighten humans, that enormous claws could make them panic, and that crimson dragon energy became stronger when victims believed resistance was hopeless. Most terrifying of all, it had learned that humans were capable of understanding exactly what fear was doing to them, and still being unable to stop feeling it. Hunters are taught that fear keeps them alive because fear tells them when to run, when to hide, and when a predator is too dangerous to fight. But if you ever find yourself in a silent forest where crimson insects begin gathering, whenever your heartbeat quickens, remember that instinct may no longer belong entirely to you. Something in the darkness may be listening to it. And if black fur appears between the trees, if demonic fangs glow with red dragon energy, and if claws begin growing brighter every time your hands start to shake, do not give the creature what it wants. Because the moment you realize the Stygian Zinogre is feeding on your fear may also be the moment you become more terrified than you have ever been. And by then, it may already be too strong to kill.
This report remains under investigation. The Guild closed this case. The archives did not.